Welcome to the Top Business Leaders Podcast. You'll learn how successful people just like you have grown their businesses, expanded their influence, and made money by writing a book. On each episode, you'll learn the inside secrets to help you create a book that can serve as a powerful marketing tool to skyrocket your business. I'm your host, Dan Janal. I help thought leaders, business executives, and entrepreneurs write their books. To find out more and to download our show notes, go to topbusinessleaders.com. Now, I'd like to welcome our guest, Mark David Gibson. Welcome.
Thanks, Dan. How are you?
Doing great. Mark, why don't you tell our audience a little bit about yourself?
Sure, happy to. So I'm basically a consultant strategist, and I work with authors and speakers, and I help them start, grow, and scale their speaking businesses. So I work with them to help them create their own brands and expand on their current brands for business development ideas. So for example, an author with a book, you use the book as a lead magnet generation to a paid speaking engagement, which then could lead you into consultancy or digital learning products thereafter. So I provide strategy on how to automate some or all of those to create the platforms from A to Z. And I'm just super excited to be here, Dan. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you very much for being here. And you're a bit modest because you didn't tell us about how you helped serve our country, and we're very proud of that, and thank you for that. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your military experience as well?
Sure, absolutely. It was my honor. I was a public affairs officer for the United States Air Force. And, a lot of people thought that the pilots had the best jobs. Well, I think I had one of the best jobs because I got to tell the entire story of the great American airmen that I worked with and the awesome air power that America's Air Force brings to the fight.
Fantastic. Thanks again for your service. I am actually ghostwriting a book now for one of the first women fighter pilots for the Navy. And that's tremendously exciting and interesting. And she's very humble about it at the same time. So very, very honored to have you on the show. So Mark, you've written a book as well. So why don't we start off with that? Why did you decide to write a book? And tell us what it was about also.
At first I thought the title of the book is Served in Silence, The Struggle to Live Authentically. And at first I thought that I was going to enter the author journey as a bucket list item until after I really did some soul searching, and I realized that my book could actually help some people that maybe had served in a very similar situation or currently serving in a similar situation. And then as I got into developing the manuscript, and then I also realized that, it might not have been just for people in the military. I happen to use the don't ask, don't tell policy as my example of serving in silence, but then there are other people that may also be experiencing the same thing throughout their life, whether it is a glass ceiling at work or a house husband or whatever the example may be. And then the book is actually a roadmap that teaches us I show you the hazards of not living an authentic life, and then working through some of those hazards to actually living an authentic life and showing up and just contributing more.
Fantastic. And did you write that book to help your business, or was that a cathartic experience, or both?
It really was a cathartic experience, and I would say probably, like I said earlier, it was more of a bucket list item to just finish the project. I wasn't really looking at it as a ways to means to start a business, but it has evolved into that because of the speaking opportunities and the consulting opportunities that have followed on after the book.
Great. Can you tell us how those extra business building activities happened? The speaking, consulting, and all the others. How did people make the transition to say, hey, he's not just an author, he can actually come here and actually help us in a number of ways?
Yeah, so when I was writing the book and I was working with, honestly, Dan, I didn't even know people like you existed that helped with manuscript strategy and ghostwriting. I mean, I heard of ghostwriting, but it wasn't until I aligned myself with a manuscript strategist and we were really going to get serious about finishing the project and we had a publication date in mind. Well, working with my publisher, who was just awesome, it was a great experience. There was some coaching that went on as well. Have you considered life after the book? Is there going to be a book tour? Is there going to be a speaking tour? And so I immediately enrolled into a mastermind course that actually taught you all of the construct of a speaking business and the book tour. So I was well equipped for after the build up of the launch of the book. Then I was ready to receive those speaking requests when they came in.
Fantastic. Did you do any outbound marketing to get those speaking requests?
At first, it was just word of mouth. It was pretty organic. And then I started doing a little bit of social media and advertising, market as this book. Here is the premise of the book. And then I really crafted a talk taking the book with a very specific business point of view and bringing me into companies and businesses and talking to them about leadership and team building, about how we contribute more as team members when we are just more authentic on the job.
Mm-hmm. Did the book start out that way, or did you morph the book's message to, or did you morph your speech to match the needs of the audience?
The latter. So
Mm-hmm.
the book, I wanted to get the book done, and the book as a memoir, it was finished, and the manuscript was done. And there is a venue for an audience, I should say, for memoir writers and giving talks with that. I realized that you can cast the net a lot wider if you had a point of view that was also targeting towards business and business development. So it was the latter of the two. Then I kind of morphed the book and the premise into the business premise and point of view. And it was basically I just took the point of view from the book and I flipped it for the business. And I believe that your secrets to your business problems are hiding in unlikely employees, and those are the employees that are not able to bring their true self to the day.
Oh, interesting. Can you give me an example?
Sure. So, whatever, right now, what's going on in the media is a lot of politics, and you really can't escape it. But let's think about how polarizing that can be in your workplace. And is that causing perhaps somebody on your team to not be as open or as authentic as they would be just in everyday operations? Well, then my challenge to that is if that individual is feeling restricted in any way, then they're probably not bringing that full power to solve the day's solution problems with their solutions. And so I just have employers and team members, team leaders, just be really aware of making sure that, it's a bumper sticker that, oh yeah, we're all very inclusive, but to make sure that we have a very inclusive environment that people feel comfortable enough. And if they do, they contribute a lot more.
Fantastic. That's a great example. So after you do a speech, how do you turn that into consulting?
This is where I just started learning about it with my mastermind group and just learning about how people, after my talk and after they read the book, and especially in the team leading environment, they wanted to have a continuing conversation. They wanted to, how do we talk to you more about this? So I developed a consultancy and a strategizing company where now I just work with a few VIP clients, and we just peel back the onion to all of their business building practice with regard to building their own speaking business. And so it really just led to VIP consultancies and people asking to have more time with me.
Great. And who was your typical client?
Well, it started out with chambers of commerce and working with chambers of commerce and their lists or their members. And then it grew from there to being a keynote speaker at several Fortune 500 companies and working on team building exercises with those companies, because the crossroads or the intersectionality of authenticity in the workplace is the end result is a happier place to work, a more productive place to work with employees that are contributing so much more.
Great. Now, your book is a memoir. It started out as a memoir, and I've had a couple of memoir or clients who wanted to write memoirs, and they got stuck because they had a lot of personal stuff going on in their heads, and they just could not. They could talk about it for a few minutes, but when it came down to putting pen on paper and talking about abusive experiences or horrific experiences, it just wasn't going to happen. And I'm not a psychologist. I can help a lot of my clients get over their fears of inadequacy and self-doubt and imposter syndrome, but some stuff is just beyond my control. So I'm curious, what advice would you have for someone writing a memoir?
The advice I would have I agree with you. Sometimes it's kind of like ripping off Band-Aids from old wounds. And that can be tough. It can be cathartic as well. But I would say seek out someone like Dan. Seek out somebody that can help you write your outline. And then, we can't boil the ocean. You can't eat the elephant all at once. So why not boil one pot at a time? And then for people like you that help us authors, write our manuscripts, then you work with somebody that helps you write that outline. And then you just take that as a project and you just tick away at that project little by little.
Great advice. What other advice or what did you learn about when you wrote your book that you wish you knew at the beginning?
Oh boy.
Talk forever. That's okay.
I was really fortunate in the fact that my publisher offered an Authors Academy, and the Authors Academy didn't teach you about how to write and the craft of writing per se. It really just taught you about the business of publishing a book, why the back matter was important, the spine, the layout, the design, and all of those things. And so I'm really glad that I was able to have that opportunity to sit through the Authors Academy first, then go right into the publishing track. In the meantime, I was perfecting, polishing, and grabbing all the sticky notes, the bar napkins, the journals, the notebooks, and trying to compile all that together. But I'm really glad. So if you are thinking about doing this, you don't have to be an expert in publishing the book, but it certainly is helpful for you to understand what vehicle you're getting into to deliver your message.
Can you give us an example? I mean, what would you have done differently, or how did your thought process change from what you thought a book was, and then what you thought after you went to the academy?
Yeah, so my thought was that I'm going to have to finish up this manuscript and get it to the 80% solution. And then I'm going to, in my mind, this was just in me, I thought, I'm going to have to go to a big city and just knock on doors and try to pitch my book and do all those things. Well, as you know, that's not the norm these days of publishing a book. So what I'm saying is I'm really glad that I had the opportunity to learn through the Authors Academy that my publisher offered prior to getting into the publishing track. And so it's not that I really wish that I would have known that in advance, because I did it in the sequence to help the process along. Mm-hmm. The other thing I guess I would tell somebody is, if you get stuck, and you're going to get stuck, it's okay. You're not defeated, you're just stuck. So then you need to seek out the assistance for somebody else that can help you carry the load, or that can help you get your project to the finish line.
I'm just taking a note here. Great, thanks. Okay, let's talk about your publishing process. You found a publisher. Congratulations. Can you tell us about that experience? How did you find a publisher? Did you have an agent? Is this a hybrid publisher, a traditional publisher? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, this was, it was a godsend. A friend of mine, a colleague, they were very supportive. Hey, how's that book coming along? And I'm like, oh, it's not. And I go through these stops and these starts, and she recommended me to this publisher. And at that point, I was getting very discouraged, because the conversations I was having with publishers was right out the gate, how many words is it? How many words do you think it's going to be? And so I knew the name of that game was the number of the words is so much per word, and then it was that was going to be the price, etc. When I finally got to the publisher that I went with, she just basically had an appointment with me on a Saturday morning, cup of coffee. Tell me about the project. Tell me about what is it that you want to do with this book, and why is this important? And we never even talked about how many words or how much it was per word or any of that, the business end of it. And that's when I knew it was going to be that perfect fit. And so it is it's a boutique publishing house. It's out of Hartford, Connecticut. It's a Publisher Purpose Press. And she basically does books that people are going to use to do something with their life, or do something with the greater cause. So if it's going to tap into a greater purpose, then it's going to fall in line with that publishing house. And it wasn't a prerequisite to take the Authors Academy, but she strongly, strongly encouraged it, because of just making sure that you're fully aware of what you're about to get involved in, because it's a process. And, people that I trained for a triathlon, and you train for sports, and it's just like that. You prepare to enter that particular sport. And so I was very fortunate. I've talked to a couple of other friends that have not had such a pleasant experience, and there are lots of stories out there. I was very lucky. The entire publishing team and the entire staff was there to just assist you to the next step of the process, to get you through the entire process with ease.
Fantastic. And you're right. I have had people come to me who've been entirely ripped off by horrible companies claiming to be publishers, and they use the term very lightly. And there are many good ones out there as well. I'm glad you found one, and that's part of the job of a good book coach, to recommend the ones that work. So I'll ask you for their name offline and their contact information. I'll be happy to put that into the show notes as well. So that's cool. Great. So Mark, we're closing up here. We're coming to the end of our time, which is cool. You've given us a lot of great information. I'm curious if there's any one last bit of information that you think we should. What question should I have asked you?
Let's see. Well, for 2020, what I am doing is I'm looking to work with clients and authors that are looking to build their speaking platform and build their speaking business. And since I've been out there, I've done it, and I can help people create automated programs and automated systems that are combined with seeking out speaking opportunities. And maybe they're not all paid speaking opportunities, but if there is a potential for you to present an offer for your, let's say, your digital learning platform, then that might make it lucrative for you to reduce your speaking fee, but then still offer connectivity back with you. And the best way to do that and to get in touch with me is if you text the word speak to the number 22828. I'll be happy to connect with you and give you more information on maybe a peek behind the Build Your Speaking Business.
Fantastic. And what is your website address?
Really easy. It's just my full name, markdavidgibson.com.
Fantastic. And the name of your book one more time if people want to go to Amazon and get it?
Yep, absolutely. You can go on markonamazon.com. It's a straight, direct gateway to my profile on Amazon. And the title of the book is Served in Silence.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining with us today. Thanks for listening to Top Business Leaders, the only podcast that shows you exactly how people just like you have built their businesses by writing a book. If you'd like to write your book but don't know where to start, you can find great information at writeyourbookinaflash.com. Thanks again for listening. We'll be back next week with another insightful interview to help you become a top business leader.